So I've been playing around with this scene, and I kind of like the fridge here, um, in respect to the placement of, it's going to be a little bit more of an interesting object. And what we did in the last video is we essentially placed it on the other side, but we unwrapped it. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we can texture this. And I believe our oven is also textured. I'm sorry, unwrapped, or we unwrapped it in one of the scenes. So that's going to be the focus of potentially the next video is we'll look at unwrapping this oven. For now, let's go ahead and work on texturing this. I'm going to make sure it's placed right on the floor. I'm going to select that object. You can see it's fridge here. I'm going to freeze transforms. Now, the thing is, when you bring something into Substance Painter, its rotation is based on the origin in the world, right? And remember, we made this fridge inside this scene instead of its own file. So what I'm actually going to do is hold Shift and just copy this fridge. And what I want to do is hide everything but this fridge. And I'm going to go to my front view. So holding spacebar and right clicking on the word my and going down to front. And I'm just going to place it here on the grid. And hold spacebar and right click, go to my right view, hit F to focus. We need to move it all the way up here. So this is in case you didn't reference it out in its own file, which is kind of sort of bad. So I'm gonna hit D and I'm gonna bring it down. Especially for games, I'm gonna hold X and just snap it to the center here. Let's go to our front view. Holding X here, snapping it. And I'm gonna do the same thing, but I'm not gonna center pivot. I'm just gonna freeze transform and I'm gonna delete history so the model is clean. And I'm gonna export selected as a fridge. I'm gonna toss mine on the desktop for now, and it's just fridge FBX, and I'm gonna export selection. Now, one other thing I want to double check is I want to right click, go to material attributes. Let's do material attributes again. It's set to Lambert 1, which is a no-no. So I'm going to right click, assign a new material on that. Lambert is fine for now. And I'm going to go m_fridge, just for material_fridge. And then I'm going to do export selection. Sending this to my desktop, I'm going to write over that same fridge file. Now in here in Substance Painter, I'm just going to do File, New, Select, and I'm going to grab that fridge file. I'm going to hit OK. Now notice when I rotate this, it rotates, if I hit F, across around the center of this object, or the base of this object. If you don't like the way that feels, what you can do is go back into Maya and then center pivot it, and then just make sure that these are still transformed out, and then hit Export Selection, and then hit do that again, and then you want to go to Edit, Project Configuration, select, and then grab that fridge again, and then hit OK. And you'll notice a difference in the way it rotates. See how the camera's set a little bit higher to the center there? So it's really your preference. I like it at the bottom. So the first step I do is a little bit more advanced than when we were doing the birthday cake, is I go to Texture Set Settings, and I go down to Bake Mesh Maps, and I change this to 2048. And I turn on Use Low Poly as High. And what it's going to use this to give us some really interesting maps that we can use later for texturing. And then I'm going to do Bake Selected Textures. And what you'll see is right off the bat, our model looks about the same, but it's got some shadow information in our texture now. Now, the way that we apply this is, what I tend to do is, I'm going to grab just kind of a base color to work with for my texture. So in here, you can see there's these different types of metals. And our fridge really has a kind of a flat specular. And I like this iron raw damage, so I'm just going to drag and drop this here. And what this does is it gives my feeling, it gives it that, it gives it a little bit of that surface information, like it's beat up a little bit, like a family's been here. And what would be nice is if we kind of did some color marks and stuff like a kid drew on here, and we'll do that in a second. But for our base here, the color here, I'm just going to grab that teal color that I liked from the scene. So this is kind of our base. And there's also these other attributes in here. If you scroll down, and it tells you more information about your model. And you can see there's roughness here. If I bring this down, you can see it becomes a more transparent, and our fridges really isn't, I'm sorry, more reflective, and our fridge really isn't that reflective. So I'm just going to crank this up a little bit like this. And for the surface grain, if you bring that down, you'll notice, let me zoom in a little bit more. It adjusts the grain, and I don't know if the recording is doing it, that's on the model itself. Now, I kind of like that. I do want it to be a little bit smaller in scale, so something like this. Actually, you know what? Let's actually crank this up a little bit, and so something like that. And I'm going to set the value of this just a little bit lower, and then below this, so this is the opacity of that channel, right? That color channel. Let's go ahead and grab the. I think that's okay, leaving it on normal. Now, how do we use this? What was the whole point of that baking the textures thing? Well, this is where it gets really cool. If I right click on this and I go to add filter, I can add something called a light map. And you want to use this baked lighting, this second option. And right off the bat, you're like, whoa, what did that do? It's all dark. Well, we want to do something, select pass through. And under attributes here, I'm going to just kind of go through these one by one. So I'm going to take my dielectric reflections down. What this does is this adds a little bit of shininess across the surface. What I tend to do, and I'm going to zoom in here, is there's something called ambient occlusion, and that's where light gets trapped. I'm just going to drag that all the way to the right, and you can see it added a really nice highlight or ambient thing there. Another thing that tends to happen is as light hits the surface, it gets trapped on the corner of these edges. So I'm going to increase my edge intensity a lot. You can see now that emulates light hitting the surface. And I used to actually have to hand paint this back in 2007 when I just started doing some environment work. I was living at really maybe actually 2003. I used to just paint these textures in. I was more of a cleanup artist back then. So that looks pretty good. So that gives us a nice base. And if I hit C for color, you can see this is what the actual texture would look like. M is for all the materials together. Now the next thing is on my reference, it actually has chrome across these three pieces. So below this layer, but above this one, I'm just going to grab this iron raw. And I think the ones that are on there are highly reflective. But like I said, I'm going a little bit different in that I like texture or surface detail on my models. So with this iron raw, I'm going to left click, sorry, on this one. I'm going to add a black mask. And what that does is it blocks out everything. And then I'm going to select back on this mask here, and I'm going to press the number 4. And what the number 4 does is allows me to select individual objects that mask will allow to go through. See that? And because I click this one, and we know we did the map, it's tiled on top of each other, you can see here that it selected both. So it's the same with this, right? If I click this, it's going to do all of them. Now, I'm okay with you experimenting a little bit on this, where you're like, whoa, that's a little too extreme. I don't like it. This iron raw, I really want more of a chrome. So how do we do that? Well, if I double click this chrome with this selected, look, it made it a chrome texture. So if you like where it's a little bit more, like kind of like a lot brighter, a lot, kind of like it was in the reference. And mine are a bit thicker, and that's okay because I tend to like that. I really should model in and unwrap some handles, and that's why I left so much space in this area. And so we could do that same thing with here, right? So here's this guy, our iron damaged raw. Say you want to just do something where it looks like plastic. You have like this really plastic shiny fridge, right? Like this family, um, or you want it a little bit duller, right? So it's up to you, kind of like your style. Like I said, I tend to like a little bit of surface information, right? So I'm going to Control Z back a few so I can get back to my surface one. So something like that. Now let's add let's handwrite in Big Chill, right? Now I'm going to do a whole nother series on surfaces and shading where we go in and we dive deep in Designer and Painter. But for this, we're just kind of getting a nice overview of this, just so we have some textures that we can use to place in our scenes inside of Maya for rendering. So let's say that I want to start infusing some personality in here. So say the kid has a little sister and she's, I don't know, like a really cute kid, and she doesn't know any better, but she wants to say to her brother, like, oh, happy birthday, because right, we made this birthday cake in the other videos. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to bring this down, and let's see if we could find a alpha that kind of looks like a marker. So I'm going to go ahead and go with this brush paint, and when I double click it, and I select my brush here, notice as I paint, it paints across the surface. Now, the problem here is with this alpha selected, you can see here, we also have this chrome material assigned, right? So what we want to do is make sure that our paint layer, this one that we're painting here, so I'm going to go ahead and just delete it. So just showing you how to delete layers. Inside of here, where you have base color and all this other stuff, just select this alpha, and then what I can do is just click here and create another paint layer. And I'm going to hit this X, and oops, we want to bring that back. So let's go to viewport or window reset UI, and that'll bring that back. I want to close my Python thing there. So let's make sure that we have our brush selected. So new layer here. And on this layer, we want to, let's see our material orb here, alpha, that's what we want. And base color, material mode. Looks pretty good. All right, let's bring this up a little bit. And let's see. Let's make this like a purple. Something like this. Like let's say they wrote with purple marker. So I'm going to write happy birthday. Now notice that this is highly, I'm holding just kind of control and right clicking to bring this up. But say they want to write happy birthday, but this is highly reflective. See that? What I want to do on my texture set settings here is I want to bring my metallic all the way down so it makes it more matted and my roughness all the way up. And now it's more flat marker. So let me get rid of this. And I'm going to write happy. And it's a little kid, so they spelled it happy with an I-E, B-Day. And then, like, maybe they drew, like, you know, I don't know, something like that. And I'm doing this with a mouse, so forgive me. So it looks pretty good, and actually it stands out across the surface, right? So how do we get this into Maya? Well, I'm going to hit Control, Shift, and E, and I'm actually going to just, there's a couple things I want for now, is inside of here, I'm going to go ahead and go down to, let's see, PBR Metallic Roughness, and I'm going to navigate to that folder. So there's my documents here. I've got these. Let's see. I'm going to pause the video and just navigate to the folder. All right, so here we have our fridge thing. I'm going to right click in there and go to new folder and create one called textures. And inside of here, I'm just going to export this out. You can see it exported a base color, emissive, all that stuff. For now, inside of Maya, because we're going to take this into a game engine much later, I can actually just, let's see, let's grab our perspective 1 camera. And let's see, perspective. There we go. I'm going to unhide everything. Now this fridge, I can actually delete it because it's really this one here with just duplicate it, right, so that we can bring it into Substance. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to Material Attributes. And I'm going to do it again, sometimes if it doesn't let you right there. And I'm going to right click again, I'm going to go to Assign Existing Material. I'm going to select M Fridge. And I'm just going to navigate to that fridge folder. So I'm going to go to File here. And under fridge here, I'm going to go to textures. I'm just going to select that base color just for this video, and I'm going to hit open. Now I'm going to press 6 to see it in my view. And it looks like I didn't apply it to the right one. Let's see, UV editor. That's the right UVs. I want to make sure that, oh, you know what I think it is? This house. So I'm going to right click, assign existing material. I'll throw Lambert 1 on all of these. And let's see what's going on here. I think I have to assign it at the highest level. I think it's that material is also on Lambert one, which is a problem. So I applied a new Lambert here, and I'll just call this gray box. So be careful. These happy accidents are. All right, so I'm going to right click on this material attributes, and I think it didn't take. Yeah, so I think I applied it to the wrong one. So there's mfridge file, and let's go ahead and make sure that we grab our base color here and hit open, and now it should, there we go. So there it is. Now, there's another material, if we select down here, and it's just the, we'd have to, we'll do this later, kind of more in depth, but you can see there's all these different AI shaders, and you can see there's one called Stingray PBS. So if I apply this one, you can see you can turn on use color map, and here's base color, and you can go to file here. And this is really nice it, for when we're here, when we're actually doing this. So if I check on Arnold here, these update a little bit more. Let's see here, let's go to material attributes, base color, and oh, I'm sorry, you know what? This is not right. Let me go back. One more. I'm going to right click and I'm going to break this connection. There we go. So now it's back to normal. Down here in color map, now I can go in here and I can grab my base color. You can see there it's applied and it's got this really nice shininess, but the reason it doesn't look like it did in our view is because, let's go back to material attributes, we need to plug in these other things like our normal map, for example. So here's our normal. You can start to see, let's close this, let's do our viewport 2.0. And let's make sure that we've got all those settings on. All right, and then let's do a couple other materials so you can see that. We need to turn on normal map too, by the way. So now you can see it started adding that surface detail. Let's add our metallic map, and which is right here. You can see it's really bright, and then let's go in and let's add our other map, and that's going to even it out. So our roughness map. So I'm going to turn on roughness, and on our roughness map here, you can see now it looks just like our thing. Now the reason it's so weird with the lighting here is because we don't actually have any lighting in our scene. So if I was to go in here and just go to create light and throw a directional light in here, and let's bring this up a little bit and rotate this down, you can see our surface acts a little bit better. Might have to let's make sure we've got shadows on. There's a lot going on with our set to kind of get it to really spark right. So, but for now, we're really looking at this more for game engines, and we're actually going to export it out in a different way later. But just so you could see a way of loading it up, and yeah. So I think one last thing I'll show you. I know I'm kind of jam-packing this video, and is there's this Arnold PBR viewer here, where if we set up an Arnold material to this, so let's go back to that material attributes. We change this from Stingray PBR. Let's go back a little bit here. We could just snap it to material. Now we want to change this to, actually, let's just right click, assign a new material just for now. And that material will be a Arnold material, and we can just pick one of these that we like. So there's the AI standard, which is I normally have people just play around with, which is, let's see, AI tune switch standard surface. There it is. And the same thing as before. With this, you can go in, you can see there's all these different values, but here's our emission roughness. So we go in, grab a file, and this is another nice way of rendering it. So you can see there it is here. And it actually, because we're using the Arnold renderer, it tends to look a little bit better, but if you want to see it in the viewport, that PBR shader that we did before. So there's our color map. Let's grab our roughness. See, it starts to look a lot more like, and we could adjust this Arnold viewer too. I'll show you guys that later, but metal, let's grab that. And then we'll load in. Let's grab that file. So you can see now it's starting to behave a little bit. We might crank up our lights too, but it's starting to look pretty realistic. Like you can see it's doing real-time reflections in here. Let me stop this for a second. Let's crank this up a little bit. Maybe to 2. Bring that back so you can see it looks a little bit nicer. And when you go to render it too, like as long as if you want to render a still, you know, I'll pause the video as this renders because it usually takes a little bit of time. Actually, it's going pretty quick. But anyway, that's a good way of doing it if you would like to see it in the viewer. So I recommend test out the PBR shader. Arnold is great, and you know, like if you turn on render Arnold here, it'll do the same thing as we had before. I just kind of leave it off so that if I stop it, it doesn't. I'm not stuck in this view, and I'll just switch back to viewport. You know. All right, that's it for this one.